Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins. I'm Trevor Hankins.
And you're on the air with Power Squared. We're continuing our look at the 40th anniversary of Transformers with John Barber, who was a writer and editor when the franchise was at IDW.
That's me.
Yeah.
Hi. Glad to be back here.
So we were eavesdropping every day there.
I'm in the midst of posting to Facebook now.
So if somebody doesn't know who you are, do you want to tell them who is John Barber?
Well, all right, yeah. So I worked on Transformers for a long time. I'm in the Transformers Hall of Fame. That's one of my big I don't know, claims to fame. I don't know. What are the so yeah, I was a webcomic artist and writer in the late 90s, early 2000s, I guess early 2000s. And then I worked at Marvel Comics as an assistant editor, associate, then an editor for, I don't know, maybe 5 years. Did some freelance writing. That's where I got into writing Transformers. Then I was an editor at IDW for another nearly 5 years. Left there, wrote more Transformers, wrote more other stuff, and came back as editor-in-chief at IDW. And I don't know, went down with the ship when Transformers left IDW. No, I don't know. And now I'm at a company called Pug W, Pan Universal Galactic Worldwide, a company that was started by John Nee, who's ex Marvel publisher, ex Wildstorm head, used to be VP at DC. Founded the game company, one of the founders of the game company, Cryptozoic. And we're doing a bunch of stuff, including a new comic that we just finished kickstarting. That's by myself and my longtime Transformers partner in crime, Andrew Griffith. So that should be, the Kickstarter's over, but
we'll get to all that.
Yeah, there we go. That's
right,
me.
Well, thanks for being on the show. It was great. Now,
all right, thank you. Good to be here. It's late. I got to go to bed.
All right. When did you discover that you wanted to be a writer?
So I think it was fifth grade. I actually remember that. It was Mr. Gardner's class at Juarez Elementary School in Anaheim, California. And we had to do like a thing about what we wanted to do when we grew up. And I think up to that point, I had this like not particularly strong interest in music, but for some reason I was like, yeah, I'm going to be like a rock star or something. I don't know, whatever. Like, I think it was astronaut before that. But that was when it really kind of it became like it was clear that was the thing I really liked. Like I remember Mr. Gardner wrote these poems about everybody, like just like 2-line poems, whatever. And his was that like, wouldn't it be fine? I don't remember the whole thing, but I remember like, wouldn't it be fine if you wrote Star Trek #9? Because I was into Star Trek at the time too. Well, I mean, still am, but so yeah, that was probably it. And then I actually really shifted more in like middle school and high school to want to draw comics, and that was like really my focus, along with the writing. Like I wanted to be like a self-publisher. I wanted to be like, I mean, not the part of it people remember him for now, but I wanted to be like Dave Sim or something, of like, right, just publishing my own comic and just doing my own thing. And that was really appealing to me for a long time. So yeah, I don't know, fifth grade. So what was that, like 11 years old, something like that?
Okay.
Yeah. Are there any creators that inspire or influence your work?
Just me. No, of course, yeah.
I wake up, I'm great, and then I just keep going.
Yeah. I keep waiting for somebody to have something with the depth and clarity of my own writing. So far. No. Yeah, but I mean, of course, there are. Who are my? I mean, in comics, it was like some of the usual suspects from people my age. Alan Moore, Frank Miller in the 80s. When I was in like high school, I was really inspired by Paul Pope, who was like publishing a lot of he was publishing his own stuff. He was like one of the self-publishing people, but he was kind of an unusual one. So I always liked his stuff. I've been thinking about this a lot because I just reread the short story collection, Burning Chrome. But William Gibson was like one of my favorite authors when I was in middle school, early high school. So like that was definitely somebody that like influenced my thinking on writing about science fiction-y stuff. Oh man, I mean, too many to mention. Who am I? I mean, I'm leaving out like so many people. Like Katsuhiro Otomo and like Akira. That was a big impact on me. Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of comics. I try to read a lot in general and watch movies and stuff. I mean, I'm terrible at that now, but I've got a 5-year-old, so
Yeah.
what am I going to do?
Be a parent.
Yeah,
Takes all
right.
day.
The worst, am I right? No. No, not at all.
He'll hear that someday and go, he doesn't love me.
Oh, they hear it all the time. I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, I don't know. Those are some of my big ones. But I mean, a lot of a lot of people like. Oh, I guess in comics, another one to probably bring up was Larry Hama. Reading G.I. Joe. That was one of the first comics I got into. Transformers, I really got into it at the same time. But I didn't actually read. I mean, I loved the Budiansky stuff, and then eventually just kind of drifted away from it, from the Marvel comic. But years and years later, like when I was in my 20s, friends around my age from England got me into, or actually a friend, Daniel Merlin Goodbury, got me into Simon Furman stuff. And then I went back and like kind of that was actually when I read the rest of Transformers, the Marvel stuff, right. And including all the like Budiansky stuff that I missed. But yeah, that stuff impacted me quite a bit, obviously too.
So you're the editor-in-chief at Pug W, we'll call it. What's your typical day like for you?
It can vary a lot. I mean, I still do some other stuff. So today I was planning on going through and trying to proof the last bit of the Conan book, the like the Colossal edition. It's like the artist edition type thing that we're doing. But I actually got sidetracked by a secret video game project I can't talk about, needing some work that it turns out I'd been using the wrong document. The two documents were named the same thing and were nearly identical. So I had to go off and fix a bunch of stuff while I was doing all these calls. But we had some calls with Marvel. We're doing like the 3D comics with them, and we had a call with them, which included like some of my old friends from back when I worked there. And what else did we do today? Then a few logistics calls with Mason, who's our editor on Cigna, and then we actually had a call. Now that Andrew and I are back, we had a call just getting everything set up for Cigna. It can vary a lot. Like that's one of the weird things with being any sort of editorial project is or any sort of editor, is you don't know what fire is going to come up that you didn't expect to happen today. So it isn't really like I can exactly plan out, here's what I'm doing Wednesday. Wednesday is going to be the Conan day or something. So something could go wrong, or somebody gets something in, which is great, so yeah, all over the place. But it's all at home. I work from home, so I'm just on my computer and on Zoom calls and stuff.
That's nice. From your experience, is there a difference between working on your own original IPs and adapting somebody else's IPs?
I think that can vary a whole lot. So I'm trying to think. At one point, I did some writing on an online Ultimate Spider-Man comic for Marvel, and it was the what was this, like maybe 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 10, I think less than 10. And the Ultimate Spider-Man was a cartoon, not the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book. This is like, it was Peter. I think Miles existed in the Ultimate Universe, but anyway, this is based on the cartoon. So like that, right. You're prescribed into like, this is the cartoon version of Peter Parker, and this is all that, you have to match the version of the IP exactly on that. And to me, that's different than what we did on Transformers, where we were, using existing characters, obviously, and obviously Transformers has a huge legacy before and after us. but we had a lot of freedom to tell our own kind of stories, and that doesn't feel that different to making my own, working on my own stuff. You know what I mean? Like the difference between that and Cigna is less than the difference between that and doing like Ultimate Spider-Man or something, where you're very locked into a format and a.
So when you were doing Transformers, were you kind of given free reign to do what you wanted to do, or were there like, we're trying to sell this toy this month?
Well, I didn't have to deal with that stuff. Certainly not the way Bob Budiansky did, where, like, I think at that point the comic was really a sales tool for the toy.
Yeah.
Whereas, like in the era that I was working on it, the comic is a brand extension of the toy.
Right.
You know, it's Hasbro, especially then, was really getting into the idea of being a media company and not just, but not just a toy company.
Right. No.
That also, you know, like they were a toy company that also did media,
Yeah.
but they were kind of making more of a push to and I actually don't know if that's what where they are now, but there was more of a push to be more IP driven or more story driven and stuff. So it wasn't like we had like free reign on stuff, and there definitely were times where it was like we want to tie in with Titan's Return, or with like that. I mean, Dark Cybertron was like one where it was like we all went out to Hasbro and made up the story and figured out comics that we would include in the toys and all that. But it was still pretty collaborative. It wasn't just I mean, it wasn't like this. I mean, I remember when I did go back and read some of the Simon Furman stuff, and I'd miss, you know, like I read it out of order, so I read some of the Simon stuff. I remember Optimus Prime getting shot, and then a guy fell out of his tummy, and I'm like, what? You know, like, what was Bob having to write? I mean, like how having to twist that around. So there tended to not be that kind of stuff. I mean, like you could find like a point here and there. Like during Dark Cybertron, I remember we had to have Tankor appear because that was going to be one of the toys. But we introduced the wrong Tankor earlier in the series. So like we did have to be like, oh, there's another Tankor. I think we had, you know, some joke in there about like there being, you know, like, no, not that Tankor, the other one. You know, like, you guys named Tankor. You know, so there were pieces like that, but we had I mean, yeah, I feel like, you know, James, myself, Margaret, Nick, you know, we all had a lot of freedom compared to what one might think about a licensed toy. And I mean, a big part of that was working with, I mean, Hasbro is a great partner in that stuff. Michael Kelly at Hasbro remains one of my best friends. And he's somebody that was running the publishing side of stuff, but he had a very good sense of story as opposed to just a sense of unthinking brand discipline. If that, I don't know if that's all the right words, but like he wasn't just going by some guidebook. He was like, this is the thing that would make the characters richer and more interesting. And most of the time when notes came from him, they were great notes that I was happy to get because it was like pointing out something that I hadn't thought through, or a good story point, or something that opened up more storytelling possibilities. So yeah, we had I mean, I have no complaints about the amount of freedom we had. We had a good amount of that.
So speaking of Transformers, we did have some questions about your work on that IP.
Yes. Let's go. Let's see if I can not choke, but let's go for it.
So how did you become involved in Transformers?
All right. That's another one. I do know that story too. I mean, obviously, I knew Transformers when I was a kid, and you read the comics, like I said, and when Dreamwave got the license, I started picking some of that up, but I wasn't super locked into it exactly. But when I was at Marvel, we did a crossover with IDW with Transformers and Avengers. My good friend Stuart Moore wrote it. It's not my favorite Transformers or Avengers comic, but I think circumstances dictated that. but at the time, Andy Schmidt was at Marvel. He was an editor at Marvel, and he'd really wanted to edit that comic because he was a big Transformers fan, and he figured that's his one shot at editing Transformers ever. But he didn't get it. It was I think Bill Roseman edited it. But I was I was sharing an office with the assistant editor on it, Alejandro Arbona, and I happened to look over and notice there's like a 2-page spread where they'd mislabeled like Prowl and Ratchet. Like they switched the captions, and I mentioned that to Alejandro in case he didn't know, because I don't think he knew the characters that well. And Andy happened to hear that. So later on, Andy leaves. Andy goes to IDW, and Andy becomes the Transformers editor. And then when I left Marvel, he remembered that I knew Transformers and that they needed somebody to write some of the movie stuff. They wanted to change. I think Chris Mowry had been writing it, and they for whatever reason they wanted to change on it. So he had me pitch on what became a comic called Sector 7. That was kind of the lowest of the low in terms of what you can do, in that it was about the humans in the movie universe of Transformers. I just mean like lowest low in terms of like, fan.
Yeah.
Least fan favorite thing. Oh, what about the people, in the Bayverse? But I had and the sales bore that out because we were a 6-issue series that turned into a 5-issue series.
Yeah.
But the work on it was good enough that I guess people liked it, and they asked me back to do the next round of movie stuff, and then I got to pitch on, and I got originally it was going to be 3 ongoing series, and then they decided not to do one of them. James was already going to do one of the series, so then I got the other ongoing series. And then Andy quit, and I was like, oh man, okay, my one editor, who's like giving me regular work, that just hired me for my first ongoing series, has left. But then he suggested that you could write and edit at IDW, so I applied for that job, and then that's how I wound up at IDW. So.
So just because you knew character names enough?
That was, yeah. I mean, it's one of those like ridiculous coincidences, maybe I'm misattributing it. Like maybe Andy and I talked about Transformers, or when he got the job, maybe I know I'd said stuff that like.
It's a better story if he just overheard you.
Yeah.
That's a better story. Stick with that.
Yeah.
So the Witwikis were not a huge success.
What?
Wasn't the Witwikis the human characters in the paper? Kind of bring the whole.
Didn't even get to use any Witwikis in that series.
What was your favorite Transformers comic to write?
Oh man.
Or is that like asking who is your favorite child?
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, I think like early on it was really exciting. That was really fun, for like the first 13-issue run or story for RID, when Andrew and I were just starting it, like that. The combination of kind of learning how to write the characters, learning how to write, seeing what Andrew was doing for the first time, seeing what Josh Perez was doing for the first time. Well, I mean, neither of that's true, but early on, I guess, it's not the first time. So, I mean, that was a lot of fun. I really liked I think it was the first annual that we did. That was Guido Guidi and Brendan Cahill doing the art, and it was like a flashback to like early days in the IDW universe, but it was all done in the style of Marvel's Transformers #1. And that comic meant a lot to me. Like I had a copy of that, and that was like I wore it out. It's got like rips and folds, so much. But kind of being able to homage that. And the script in that was by Ralph Macchio, and I used to work directly for him. So, when I was at Marvel, I would remember asking him questions about that stuff. So that one was a lot of fun to kind of homage that and get to write different styles. I think even all the all the Dinobot stuff I did with Livio, that was a lot of fun too. And then I think especially the launch era of Optimus Prime with Kei-Zama. I think that was my other. I mean, that year, I don't know, man. It is like trying to pick kids. Some of them were not fun. You know, even the ones that I liked. You know, I know they weren't fun to write. Just out of the whatever. There's some problem with it or something that I couldn't solve, that I couldn't figure out in my head or whatever. Just dumb writer stuff, like not anything super external.
Are there any? Was there any Transformers story you wish you could have written differently? In hindsight.
Well, yeah. Let's see. I think my biggest regret was not introducing female Transformers earlier than we did, and we were just kind of like we felt locked into the continuity that the IDW universe had set up, and it actually took Windblade winning the character creation contest during Dark Cybertron for us to solve it. I think we should have just solved it earlier and just had issue 1 of RID and issue 1 of More Than Meets the Eye when the all the other Cybertronians are returning to Cybertron. Look, a bunch of them are female Transformers. They're all, so I regret that it isn't a particular story. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I'd do different on it. And I'm keeping these in my back pocket because they might come up later, but there are like 2 stories that I thought of later that I don't think can work on very many things that aren't Transformers. You know what I mean? Like, it isn't like I can just lift this out and be like, oh, okay, here's the different things. Like, the mythology of Transformers really weighs into it. So I sort of regret not having the chance to write those. But like I said, you never know, and I'm keeping that in my back pocket. But I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I wish I would have done differently, but I don't think there's nothing aside from the female Autobot thing. There's nothing super big or female Transformer thing. There's nothing super big in my head that weighs on me. I'm sure somebody else can think of something that I screwed up that I should.
That's what we have comments for. So
yeah.
In our previous interview, I talked about how you were able to effectively maintain continuity and fill in plot gaps left in previous stories and like the G1 and live action timelines. From your memory, were there any plot gaps that were more difficult to fill in than others? Or is that too specific?
No, that's a good question. I don't like. Mostly, like the way I sort of approached it was like almost like an archaeologist or something, where I was like looking at all the IDW comics and like making notes about them early on, and kind of figuring out that this is stuff that happened, and there's some stuff that contradicted or didn't add up. So there's stuff like making up the ancient headmasters being a whole different war than the headmasters later on. Or with like Galvatron, like some of the timeline didn't add up. I think the weirdest one, or the character that was written the most differently depending on who was writing him, the 2 characters with that I think were, one was Prowl, but I think all that more or less added up. Like he was either coldly logical or not, depending on who was writing it. But you could kind of like I feel like Mike Costa did a lot of the work on that to kind of set that back up. I think he did like a one-off issue about Prowl that like I thought made sense, and then James and I were more or less aligned on Prowl, so it all that sort of took care of itself, I think, a lot of the ways. But Soundwave was the other one where, like, more than anybody else, I think that's the character that Simon writes differently than everyone else writes him, because everybody else grew up, whether consciously or not, grew up with the cartoon, and it works on Transformers. The cartoon Soundwave is so different from the way Simon wrote the character. So sometimes, I think like when Shane McCarthy was writing Soundwave, it was very cartoon style, Laserbeak, eject, the voice modulation, built into it. But Simon doesn't write him like that at all. Like Simon writes him like a very different character. So I think at one point I like just sat down and we did a 2-issue like origin of Soundwave story that kind of went through all of the different parts where he'd shown up. I have no idea if that holds up at all, like if it makes any sense. But it was like kind of necessary for me to figure out what Soundwave was all about. And then he's always one of my favorite Decepticons to write, because I thought he was so nuanced because of all those different takes on him that it kind of added like depth to him. And I've got a Soundwave T-shirt, and every once in a while my son will ask me, oh, who he's into Transformers, and be like, who's that? Is that Soundwave? Is he a good guy or a bad guy? I'm like, it's complicated.
You'll understand.
How difficult was it to try and maintain continuity with other books running at the same time while also writing for Robots in Disguise and other promotional comics?
Yeah, I'm sure we messed up on places, but it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't that bad because we all sort of had our own territories. The Lost Light was off in its section, and there's certain characters that were like sectioned off. Like I would have liked to have used Grimlock, but James had like kind of a lock on Grimlock for a while, even though the character didn't show up for a long time. James always knew where he was, which is cool. I mean, it wasn't a fight or a problem or anything. I mean, the fact that I was editing the other books helped. And when Marguerite started writing the stuff on Cybertron, we had to keep track of everything. I mean, that was another, like, her take on Starscream was different than mine. So I don't think that created like a continuity, like a fundamental continuity error. But there are times where it's implied that Starscream did things more ruthlessly in the comics that I wrote than Marguerite was writing Starscream is doing in the comics that she was writing. I don't know if that's a straight up continuity error kind of thing, or if it's just you can kind of take your pick as to which one's the truth, in the sense that, like, did Starscream try to kill Thundercracker or did he not? You could depending on which version of the character you think was the right one, maybe that's the answer. Maybe Starscream doesn't know if he really did it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I sort of think there's some things like that where Starscream probably told somebody to go take care of this problem and didn't specify how to do it. So his hands are probably more clean than it implies in the comic I wrote. So it fits in with Marguerite's. But those are all things we were aware of. It wasn't like that slipped up on us. Again, there's probably places where things slipped up, somewhere where Ironhide is in two places at once or something. But you can do that just by yourself. I remember when we were doing a bunch of G.I. Joe comics, Chuck Dixon was writing a couple of them, and I think our ID editor Carlos Guzman was like, Snake Eyes is in like Southeast Asia in one comic, and he's in Canada in another comic, and they both take place at the same time. Even though this is like a linear storyline, and it was just like that many characters, things get messed up that way just by yourself, even for a veteran writer who knows that stuff. So I'm sure we did mess up stuff like that, but we definitely talked a lot. We shared stuff around. I felt like it was very, between the three of us and Nick when he was in writing stuff, and anybody else that came in that wrote other stuff, we were pretty free with sharing each other's ideas and bouncing stuff off of each other. I always felt. I hope everybody else felt that way too. There was a kind of collaborative environment on that stuff.
Was there a difference in difficulty between writing something like the comic formerly known as Robots in Disguise, where you had more creative freedom, versus something like Angry Birds or Chic Hydrobot, where you had to like promote something?
Yeah, I actually like the Angry Birds one was well, I mean, I think probably a better example would be like, I don't know, Schick Hydrobot or something, where like, yes, that is purely a technical exercise in terms of writing it. I'm not going to get anything emotional across in this. Maybe there'll be some good jokes. Hopefully, it'll make a good comic, because maybe this is going to be somebody's first comic. So you want it to be something good to land on. Like, you don't want it to be like, just garbage. But the point is, it's there to sell something. Even something as goofy as the Angry Birds one, we had a lot of freedom on it, and it was really. It was my chance to just write a sitcom with these characters almost. Like it was just them making jokes. Maybe it wasn't funny to anybody but me. I don't know. But there wasn't. We had less to go on than one might think. It really was just like, okay, here's the designs. Now write a story, and they seem pretty cool with everything we did. I don't think there's, so, but yes, there is a difference between the two. Because RID, I feel like RID and all that stuff expresses something. I think at the end of the day, like I'm proud of it, and on an artistic level, on a, maybe it doesn't all work. Maybe it doesn't come together, but that's on me. Not on external forces, or on Andrew. Let's blame it on Andrew. But but it explores ideas, about war and empire, and about people changing or not changing, and I think it's. That whole run is a big novel in my head, where, the thing where it's like, oh, you're going to do 4 issues, and it's the Angry Birds get turned into Transformers, and it's goofy, silly fun. That, it definitely is different. Sometimes it's different muscles, but I prefer the stuff that's maybe more open on it. But I had a good time writing that Angry Birds comic. I thought it was, I like that Angry Birds comic more than I probably should for something like that, especially I don't know, when you go into that world. Angry Birds was so big right around then, and is not anymore, in like a kind of stunning way, but I still like that one. I wish that was around. Nobody's ever going to reprint that, right? It's gone forever.
Keep your copy.
Yeah, exactly.
We might have asked you this question. I don't remember if we asked you this question before, but do you have a favorite character?
My favorites were or are Prowl, who I mentioned before. Like, that was my first Transformer that I got. That was my first one. I was an adult working on Transformers before I realized that he was not one of the major characters on the cartoon when I was a kid. I just sort of edited him into being like one of the main guys. It was really this awakening of oh, he was just like one of the background characters in that show. It was Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Grimlock, wasn't it? Or whoever. But I liked writing him because I liked the that he was essentially, he was on the side of good, but he was willing to push what you would do in order to do that, and having him up against other characters like Bumblebee who wouldn't do that, who wouldn't cross certain lines where Prowl certainly would. And he reminded me of the character Avon from Blake 7. You ever saw that TV show, the old British show? Who was a much more ruthless than Prowl was, but sort of this ruthless good guy. Loved writing RC. She was probably my favorite character, especially as she started to sort of evolve and become more interesting, or more nuanced, as opposed to just the killing machine in the beginning. And I think the way she would sometimes say, the way she would think about things or say things that she was thinking in a weird way, that's definitely the thing I kind of like I identified with some of that stuff. Just like bluntly, like I wouldn't do that, but like I would think that and then not say some of the stuff she would say or something or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Starscream, I really liked writing him too. Like that was like kind of I think the first thing I really hit on in the outline, in the sense that like it's something that I think really clicked once it started going, was I had the idea that Starscream goes into politics, and it was Andy who was like, Andy Schmidt, he was like, well, what if he's really good at it? And instead of being like the secondary leader of the Decepticons, he's actually a political machine that can really make things happen. And he was, especially early on when I was writing him, utterly ruthless. He was just about power, and everything else was secondary. Like I remember when he did the scene where he kills Metal Hawk, and Carlos, I remember Carlos was like, I knew that was happening, but like when he actually does it, like I thought they were friends. And like, no, they are friends. He does like Metal Hawk. He just likes power more, and he's willing to make that choice.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't like him in the sense that I admire that. That's terrible.
Right.
But I liked writing it.
That's not how you run Plug W.
Yes. That's why I'm still there.
Do you have a Transformers collection?
Somewhere I've got all my old toys. My nephew was playing with them last, but they were at my dad's house, and I haven't brought them back here. I'm actually looking up. I've got a bunch up on a wall that you can't see over there. Like when I first got the job, I bought a bunch of the Transformers toys that were out like around that time. Right now, I've got my what do you call them? The McFarlane. These guys that were based on our toys that came out. What are they called? The page punchers. So it's not really a collection in the sense I haven't even managed to take these guys out of the box yet.
It's a new ed box collection.
Yes, yeah. I can have Batman and Optimus Prime hanging out together. So less so than a lot of people. I'm not a hardcore Transformers toy collector, but I do like picking them up, and I'm very shallow in my toy collection, but I will pick things up, when I'm at stores and stuff like that. I haven't gotten into the point where I'm spending a ton of money on that stuff yet, but you never know.
So you went from being a fan of Transformers to officially contributing to it, and now back to seeing it from a fan's perspective.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
That really was funny. That's when Void Rivals 1 came out. That was the first Transformers comic that I hadn't, at some level, had some tiny contribution, even if it was just telling David Marriott, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, or something, that I hadn't had some sort of involvement in. And that was weird. I'll be honest, it's a little weird. It was a little weird yesterday when the Eisner nominations came out, and I was nominated for Eisner's, which is great. I love Daniel Warren Johnson. I really enjoy the series. And, there still is that part of like, oh man, as soon as I leave, the first one comes out.
When we were talking to Budiansky, he was saying, he's not really a fan. That was just a job for him.
Yeah.
And
yeah. It's got to be different it has to be, because there wasn't a Transformers for him to be a fan of before he started working on it.
Right. He doesn't care what happens to it after he's done. So it was
But he is grateful for the fans.
Oh yeah, and he gets work from it still and stuff. But I was just sort of interesting. It's like, yeah, it was a job.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's weird. I like I think about his relationship with Transformers and Simon's a lot. Just in that, like it's they're probably the only two people who come into this stuff like totally clean. You know what I mean? That at no point do they necessarily hear Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime because they were right before then. You know, even if I don't, I have to intentionally not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a strange thing. But yeah, no, I mean, I totally grew up on Transformers. I mean, it was definitely one of the big pieces of my, you know, my childhood, and then, like I said, I did get into it again later on, and it you know, it is really there. You know, I don't know if I'd be like, if I didn't like the stuff that Skybound was putting out, I wouldn't feel a need to read it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not like that. You know, like my fandom doesn't run that deep that I wouldn't buy them when I'm not enjoying it. But I do like what they're doing. I think it's cool, and yeah, I know. I mean, I know one way or another, Daniel Warren Johnson was going to be working on Transformer stuff. Whoever wound up with that license, I think it's really cool that they made that the focal point of it. And I know, you know, Robert Kirkman's a big Transformers fan. I mean, we used to text about that stuff. I mean, it's all legitimate stuff. So I know it's like, I like that it's in good hands, but I also think the reality of what it is pretty fun and different enough from what we were doing, that I'm not, you know, I'm not like comparing it to what we're doing. It's definitely more of a comparing it to the '80s stuff that I grew up with. You know, that it's, but yeah, but that is weird. Of course, Bob wouldn't. Yeah,
Yeah, it was just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a job. You know.
No, yeah. That's yeah, and he wasn't.
It's like he named 250 characters or something. You know? It's like, yeah,
And
it's just a
wrote
job.
bios.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's like you're really involved. Yeah, it's just a job. Oh, well,
Yeah.
it is, which it was to him. So.
If you had the opportunity, would you work on Transformers again in the future?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sure. I definitely wouldn't. I 100% would not rule anything out. I a lot of times when people come back to things that they did, the second time is not as good, and I'd be aware of that, and I'd want to do something, you know, at least interesting or different on it. And there are counter examples. I mean, like Peter David's second run on X Factor was better than the first one. I think, you know, I think it was a better comic, even though I really liked the first one. But there's a lot of times where that doesn't happen, and you just wind up with stuff that's less interesting. But I mean, like Simon keeps coming back and keeps writing good stuff. So, yeah. So yeah, no, I absolutely wouldn't rule it out. And I'd like the characters. I'd love to, sure. But I'd want to be. I don't know. I guess this is a stupid thing to say. I try not to do it badly. I mean, what am I trying to get at? Like, my intention wouldn't be to make a bad comic. I guess that's my only thought there. So yeah, sure, yeah, definitely. Why, did you hear something? No,
Yes, we'll talk about that later. I think the last time you were on the show, which we had you kidnapped for a couple hours, you were the editor-in-chief at IDW. According to I looked at your LinkedIn profile.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And you had down that you were a writer and comic book maker. Sorry, can't read my own typing. Until last month. What happened last? It says until April 2024.
Oh! That's when I finally updated it with the job at Pug W. So it must have just. Oh, I need to check that out. It must have just superseded that. Like, I didn't realize that's what it would do. I guess I think I added editor-in-chief at EFI, and it must have just cut off the other one and put it in date on it.
It seemed to overlap for a while.
Oh, the reality of it did, but like there wasn't the presence of Pug W on LinkedIn until like a month ago. This is no motivation behind it. It was just like we didn't have that up. Then finally it was like, oh, we should put up a Pug W LinkedIn profile. Everybody there should probably link up to it, and I did that. And I guess I didn't realize it was going to make it sound like I stopped doing. No, I'm still working on comics.
I'm not the editor at LinkedIn. I'm just
still working on comics. I didn't think that would make it look like I didn't do that.
Yeah. Before we get to Pug W, we did talk to you at the last Comic-Con, and you were working on a book. Was that what Cigna was? You were working with a friend, somebody you'd worked with before on a book, or you were trying to, or something.
Was I vague about that? I don't know. Was that last Comic-Con? I'm surprised it wouldn't. Well, yeah, no, I didn't. I wouldn't have meant to be cagey about it. I probably would have told you guys about it.
You send it. You say you send us a copy, but anyway, it's okay.
Oh,
I bought Cigna through the.
No, I can send you a PDF right after this.
Fine.
I'm sorry. I did that. You know what? I did that with David Marriott too. I worked with former Transformers editor, or I think longest running Transformers editor, David Marriott. I work with his mom at Pug W. She works here. She was a longtime comic book person, and so was his dad. So like she was like, I just want to pass this on for my adult son, who said he didn't get a PDF of Cigna. And he was joking. Like I talked to David, but I was like, what are you talking? No, I sent that to him, and I realized I'd like sent it to his IDW address, and he's at Boom now. So
I'm not asking for a copy, but you were.
No,
you did say that you were working on something. Yeah. I didn't know if that's what Cigna was or not.
I guess that must have been. I mean, I don't think this is like any secret. Livio and I are talking about doing something too, where we kind of got a plan to do something that I am being a little cagey about, but like I've just gotten kind of derailed by a bunch of other work that I've been trying to do. But that must have been what it was. I don't know why I was being secretive with you guys. You
don't trust us?
Yeah. Who was it? Maybe there's somebody else at our table that I didn't. Yeah. No,
Nancy was there. I'm sure that was the problem.
That was it.
Yeah, she'll take it.
I've got a couple other projects that I'm working on, but I don't think any of those were actually around at that point. So yeah, it must have been. Unless it was like trying to be vague about some Pug W thing that we hadn't announced yet.
I honestly don't remember the details. I just remember you were saying you were working on something. Yeah. So I'm sure your experience at IDW and Marvel was interesting. What interested Pug W in you? What interested you in Pug W?
Well, let's see. So when was it? It was like right after a Comic-Con, not this last one, but the one before. Mm-hmm. I'd been talking to John Nee and some of the other people at Pug W, and I'd been like doing a little bit of freelance. Like they'd pick me up to do some like freelance stuff here and there, a little bit of writing and a little bit of editing and some stuff. And I met John when I was at IDW. That he was a publisher at Marvel at that time, and IDW was licensing like kids Marvel comics at that point. So that's where I got to meet him, and he was always a very big supporter of mine, which is really nice. And I don't really know exactly why, but he was always very positive about me. Not everything went exactly right on those books or between everybody, but he was always very positive with me, which was very nice. And then afterwards, we talked, and we were just kind of getting along pretty well. Then the offer came, and it was kind of everything I could dream of in a lot of ways. That it was, in the sense that it was, to get into the sort of the nuts and bolts on it. Like I'm like technically freelance in that they're paying my corporation and not paying then like not doing like insurance and stuff. But I've always been on my wife's insurance, even when I was at IDW, even when I so that part worked out really nice. I think it's okay to say that publicly, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's all above board. But no, sorry. So like that part worked out nice, and the idea that I could work on the stuff there, but still do my own thing was really cool. And I also really like the I mean, there's like 6 people that work there. You know, like it's really small. Like it's a really small group, and we're like John has like a network of companies, so we have the affiliation with some cryptozoic stuff, and you know, there's a little bit of cross pollination on some of the projects. So like that part's cool too. But just the idea of of being at a place where there's a handful of people all working to make stuff, and not a lot of the bureaucracy or the politicking that goes on at some other places, or that can start to emerge, especially as things get more more corporatized, and you know, I like, even at the time I was at Marvel, it wasn't, I mean, it was Marvel, it was a huge company, but there were still only a couple hundred people there. You know, like it wasn't like whenever Hasbro did a big round of layoffs, I would just be astounded because more people would get laid off than have ever worked at a place that I've worked, you know? Yeah. And that, you know, that part of the thing where like there's a regulation for when you can have a window in your office or something like that doesn't really appeal to me. You know, like I like the sort of free flowing, well, here's what we're going to do, you know, kind of thing. And there need to be limits on that, because it can definitely turn toxic. But given the small number of people and the fact that we all kind of, well, we didn't all know each other. That's not true at all. But the small number of people, it I don't know. It's just it's fun. It feels scrappy and cool. And I don't need to leave my house.
No, that's nice.
You know, I don't need to put on shoes. Am I wearing pants? Nobody knows. You know.
Let's not find out.
No, I am. I want to be clear. I am in fact wearing pants.
Back to it. That's good. The website for Pug W. Who named it Pen?
I don't think I can say it, but it's somebody that worked there has a sense of humor about it. There was it's meant to be a little, you know, it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy-ish.
Okay. It kind of reminds us, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Mystery Science Theater 3000, when they had the movie and they were watching, it was said Universal International, and isn't the fact that it's Universal make it international?
Right.
So you're Pan Global, you know, Pan Galactic.
Yeah.
Pan Universal Galactic, worldwide. It sounds like there's this plan to do a lot of stuff, because it says you're into custom publishing, talent consulting, creating the best comics, games, prose, art books, RPGs, and more. It sounds very
ambitious.
Ambitious is the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
But on your website, there's like 3 things. So,
we do a lot of stuff that like they were working just behind the scenes on stuff. So there are definitely things that have come out that Pug W has made, like for somebody else where our name isn't on them. You know, so there's a lot of like creative services type jobs like that. A lot of the custom stuff goes into that category where you won't see any Pug branding on it, but we've made a bunch of stuff, you know, for other clients and things like that. So there's a lot of that. Johnny knows everyone, it seems. I you know, he just knows a lot of people, and he's, you know, worked with a lot of, I mean, he was Jim Lee's first person to work with him at Wildstorm or whatever he was. I don't know if that's true, but like, what, you know, he was,
it is,
you
now.
know, right.
Print the legend, is it?
Yeah, right. So they're definitely like you know, big like that level talent that I like John will maybe be consulting with, you know what I mean, that where that sort of gets wrapped up into the Pug business. Yeah, no, it is funny. There's only like publicly we're doing through the 3D comics at Marvel, the Conan book, Cigna,
Yeah.
and a couple games. But even some of the games that we've done have actually routed through cryptozoic. I mean, not cryptocurrency.
So you had a successful Kickstarter for Cigna.
Yeah.
Yeah. That you wrote and Andrew Lee Griffith drew. You two worked together in Transformers. What was it like working with him again?
Awful. No. Like Andrew's a.
We have a special guest. Andrew's on the show now.
Oh no. Andrew's not here, is he? Yeah, he's not listening. No, I loved it. I mean, Andrew and I are. I mean, we always kept talking to each other. Even when we weren't working on stuff. So no, it's really good. He, like I scripted it. We work really closely together on the plot and on the story of it. Like it's much more collaborative story wise than any sort of typical like writer artist division or something. I also draw all the good parts. Again, Andrew's not here, right?
Right. Yeah.
Draw all the good parts.
He just fills in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's like he has a filter or something that he uses. So we work really close on the story and work really hard on that. I will say, and I've said this a bunch of times, and Andrew, enough that Andrew jokes about it too, that a lot of times what'll happen with Andrew is I've got all the kids to bed finally. Like I'll get up at around 6 a.m, get kids off to school, work all day, make dinner, get the kids down for bed. I'll be relaxing at like 11 at night or something, and then I'll get a text from Andrew, who is 3 hours ahead of me. So that means it's like 2 a.m. his time. I'm exhausted and can't respond to texts. I don't want to do that. And then Andrew will be like, "What if we did this in the story instead?" And like it wrecks a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill him." And then I'll sit there for a minute, and I'll be like, "Oh no, actually, that's kind of a good idea, and that would lead to this, and that would lead to that." And I'm like, "Oh, that's actually really good. I can't not do that." So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that working with Andrew. But no, working with Andrew's great. I mean, we've been working together so long and know each other so well, and just kind of came up in all the stuff at the same time, and are, I think real close to the same age. I mean, I think we're within a year of each other, by chance. I mean, like circumstance threw us together on like one of the one of the Transformers movie books when we were doing Out Foundation. No, it's great. He's like flat out one of the people that I would rather work with than anybody else. And there's a handful of people like that. I'm always happy to work with Brendan Cahill, Kei Zama, Sarah Petrie Droscher. There's a few people, Livio. Yeah. I'm probably forgetting somebody who's going to be really offended, but I don't mean to. But again, it's a constant. It's always great. Andrew's art stepped up, I think, on this book, and I really like Rhonda Pattison's coloring it, and I think she brings out like some qualities in Andrew's stuff that you just haven't seen. Not haven't seen, but just that she highlights the stuff just right, and there's no. I don't know, like coloring can make things look wrong, like not just like be the wrong color, but it can make things look the wrong shape, especially going into like faces and stuff. And she gets what he's doing and just enhances it. So I think it's the best looking stuff he's ever done.
So you want to tell us what Cigna? Want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's it's in the future, a couple hundred years in the future, and in the story, 100 years ago, there had been a devastating war, at the end of which mysteriously the sun has turned into a red giant, it's like a billion years off of the sequence it should be, and there's no faster than light travel. There's no mystical portals to other parts of the universe. So the grandchildren of that war are probably the last generation of humanity. You know, the Earth is uninhabitable. They've moved off and they're in the asteroid belt and other places. But the sun's going to simultaneously cool, but also expand enough to burn things or freeze things. Like, it's just the habitable zone is disappearing. But this a young woman named Ketna Vora finds a war mech from that war, and it talks to her, which isn't what she's expecting, and it suggests that there might be a way to save the world, or save what's left of humanity, or save what's left of the solar system. But the real question is, for who? Because that war was fought against machines, and whose side is this machine really on? Yeah, so it's mecha action. It's in a lot of ways kind of a Transformers, Star Warsy kind of mashup. But there's you kind of play in with a lot of stuff from like The Expanse, kind of like that. Not like that became an influence on us, on me anyway. And I don't know, like Martha Wells books, like the Murderbot books that she does. The kind of AI intelligence, like not in the sense of like stealing people's art online, but like the part where you're going to have to, you know, like where machines will get to some point where you do have to kind of deal with them being as smart as people, and there's all stuff that we're interested in.
Is this a one shot, or is this a series, or?
Oh no! It's a 6-issue series initially. The one that we kickstarted the first volume. The Kickstarter edition is like a deluxe, not going to be anywhere else, hardcover version of the extra length first chapter of it. But the whole series, the whole initial series is going to be 6 issues. We're plowing ahead on that. We're working on the rest of it, and it will be available in comic book stores probably by the end of the year, but we want to make sure we're far enough ahead.
Yeah.
Andrew did a issue of Godzilla, she couldn't pass up because that was cool, but that slows us down on Cigna and everything, but it's great because Godzilla's pretty great.
So when's the Kickstarter going to be fulfilled, as they say?
I think we should be by September, I think, is what we're shooting for. We literally just had a call about that, strategizing everything, but we'll give the first issue. The comic is done. We have the back matter stuff, some bells and whistles to add to it, but filament emails should be going out next week. And like I said earlier, or was it before we were on? Andrew and I both happened to go away right after that. He went to a convention in like Switzerland or something, and so we're playing catch up and realizing we'd forgotten to send emails to everyone. But that's written in
updates. That's for suckers.
Yeah, we just took the money and ran. Is what
there is no Cigna. It's just there was a 3D cover option which I took.
Oh, cool.
And at the last Comic-Con, you were, and I think Pug W was part of a 3D.
Yeah.
So is that a big push at Pug W?
Yeah. Well, our first, the first thing that'll actually come out from us, I think the first thing that'll physically be in stores is going to be one of the Marvel 3D comics. We're working with Marvel, and we're doing 3D editions of classic Marvel comics, or older, classic. The first one's going to be New Mutants '98, which was the first Deadpool. We've got another Deadpool. We'll do the next one is going to be the Circle Chase, the Joe Mad, the first Deadpool solo issue. Obviously, both of those timed around some movie or other that's supposed to be coming out this.
I forgot it. So you are also involved with, you mentioned the Conan Barbarian Colossal Edition, which is also on the website.
Yeah.
What's your involvement with that? You're editing it, or?
I guess based on the credits, I'm co-editing it with Ian Shalgren, who's our designer, who's amazing and did an incredible job putting this thing together. And he's actually he made a discovery about some of the pages we had a thing we thought was turned into a book and record later was actually a book and record first. So he's fixing some of the attribution on the pages right now. But yeah, it's kind of a kind of work with him. Yeah, I mean, it's all existing art, so it's not like I had anything to do with any of that stuff. And I mean, really, we're like Ian came in as a designer, and most of my contributions to his designs have been, yeah. So
they're paying you a lot to do it.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was funded, or is being funded through Zoop.
Yeah.
Which I've never heard of. What is Zoop?
Okay. Zoop is another crowdfunding platform. It's essentially a Kickstarter kind of thing, but it's specifically made for comics. One of the people that started it was a guy named Eric Moss, who used to work with me at IDW. He used to work with me and Nate Murray, who's a publisher at EFI. And the idea behind Zoop was that it would be like partially curated in that not just anything would go up there, which is also true of Kickstarter, but maybe with a little more eye toward the curation. But the other part of it was that theoretically they would they'll do fulfillment and they'll do all of the printing and stuff, so if you wanted to do a comic and you don't know the logistics side of that stuff, they'll do that. We're working super closely with them, and talk to Eric all the time, but we're actually not exactly going through them on that stuff. But the main printer that they had worked with was the same printer that we were working with. It's all that, none of that's meaningful. That's all just behind the scenes stuff. It's all cool, but yeah, it's basically a comic centric Kickstarter. The biggest stuff they've done was Scott Dunbier did the comics for the Ukraine. That he got the Eisner last year for Humanitarian Award. That was via Zoop, and the Winterman Artist Edition that was done when J.P. Leon died. That was like a benefit for JP's family. That was also Scott running that through Zoop. I think those have probably been the biggest projects, but I think they just launched their first non-comic project, which was a hack slash board game or card game by former Transformers artist Tim Seeley. He drew some covers. You
seem to know everybody doing everything. So is the idea to crowdfund everything first, or?
It's going to depend on the project. Really, as much as we can, yeah, because assuming it makes sense for the project. It doesn't make sense to crowdfund a 3D Marvel comic. That's going to be at comic book stores. But a lot of the other stuff, it kind of makes sense in the sense that crowdfunding has moved into today, which is that a lot of it is pre-orders. It's getting pre-orders, or it's getting the thing into the eyes, in front of the eyes of the people who are going to be interested in it. Where the audiences in general have fragmented so much that I don't think you really have you don't have the world that I kind of grew up in, where it was like there are people that buy comics so they go to comic book stores. Right. Well, that isn't how people necessarily buy comics now. A lot of people buy comics at Target, or they read them on their phone or whatever. And the sense that there were people who were comic book readers and not comic book readers has also kind of eroded, where I think you're a lot more common now to have a thing that had always existed with Transformers, which was there were people who liked Transformers comics, and those were the comics they liked. The end. They liked Transformers, so they liked the Transformers comics. And I think a lot of stuff has shifted into that, where it's I don't know, if you like tennis, you might want to buy a tennis comic. You don't want to go to a comic book store. You don't want to be an expert in comics. Right. So a lot of the stuff with crowdfunding is about just getting the attention and getting it in front of people, as opposed to I mean, Signo was gonna. I mean, Signo was gonna happen. You know, it wasn't like a thing that we kickstarted it after the comic was done, so we were stuck with it. But it was a good way to get it in front of people and get eyes on it, and hopefully get people excited about it and get a good book to people.
Are you trying to then do everything through Zoop, or are you gonna
Oh, it's going to depend on the
project?
project. Yeah. It made sense to us to do Zoop through there because they had successfully done an artist edition. So it seemed like a place that was a good home for that, and that maybe people that paid attention to Zoop might want another one with the Conan one. But it's case by case. I mean, they're certainly like working with them.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't need to meet new people that way, which is ideal.
All right, so I guess a couple general questions.
Okay.
Is there? I've asked one or two of these before, but is there any advice you'd give to a prospective writer or editor?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a writer, I mean, in the world today, be open to writing different things. Because I think that's kind of like a world where somebody was only writing comics or something like that doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, it does. I mean, there are people that do that, but like it other mediums will show up sometimes, which is fun. But I think that's I don't know. Don't limit yourself to that. If you're looking to get into comics, I mean, I think the biggest recommendation I still have is to make something, because that immediately puts you in a category far away from a lot of people that just kind of want to do it. And that thing could be, like a comic. I mean, which obviously you guys know how to make. It could be a book or a movie these days. You know what I mean? Like you could, like that stuff's all better than just sending pitches out. But there's no. I mean, this might be where I am now, but a big part of it. I mean, like I was having this conversation with Brendan Cahill. Actually, I mentioned earlier, but I was talking to him yesterday. But there's this weird part where I feel like I've in a lot of ways returned to where I was in like high school or something, where I'm like making this stuff and figuring out a way to get it out there, as opposed to hoping somebody like hires me for something. And I like that, and I think that's a good, healthy place to be, sort of. So I don't know. I don't know if that's advice, but like the world exists where you can make your own stuff and get it out there, and that's the most. I guess that's the most important thing, right? I mean, that's just why you do it.
Not to make money.
Don't have AI write all your stuff. I mean, whenever I hear about like what AI can help me with writing, I'm like, well, what's the point of writing then?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing it?
And you can't copyright it either, thank God.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
Do you have any hobbies outside of what you're currently doing?
Lately I've been reading a lot. Does that count?
Sure.
Yeah.
I like video games. I was super into video games for a while, and then kind of this sounds silly and illiterate sounding, but like I got really into reading again a couple of years ago and started reading a bunch, which really ate into my video game time. Not that I have anything against video games, I still enjoy them, but like
there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big problem. We got to fix that.
Yeah, I know. More hours.
Yeah. I don't know. Having kids isn't exactly a hobby, but it certainly eats up the time in a fun way. I like, I love going out and doing fun stuff with my kids. My son just bought a plastic. Went to the rummage sale and he got a plastic baseball bat for 50 cents, and then we had to spend like $10 getting plastic balls because. But,
It reminds me one time they got free fish, and then of course you have to go and buy a tank and
Yeah.
what it's just,
right,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But yeah,
So
overeating.
is
I
one
don't
of
know.
the things you're reading Power Squared?
Of course, I enjoy. Yeah. I'm behind as I
Yeah.
always am, but
I see. Yeah.
well, no, I'm behind.
All right. Well,
But I know I love. I really appreciate what you guys do, and I love talking to you guys about it. And it's I don't know. I continue to think it gets better and better, but unless you guys are really taking a slump in the last couple months.
well, no, I think it's gotten better. Yeah, and I do appreciate the fact that when you do treat us like we're actually colleagues or whatever,
Well, yeah,
as
I mean,
opposed to totally ignoring us. It's nice. I appreciate it. It makes me feel special.
you
Actually,
guys do real stuff. No, it's
no,
great.
but a lot of people like, yeah, I did a comic too. But,
No, sorry, I mean to laugh at you. This is like that's
no, it's
horrible.
fine. But no, but I mean, I tell people at work I do a comic book. They go, oh yeah, great, and they just no, never like give a about it.
That's weird. Yeah, I mean that's weird given what you do. I think. Like I could see that if you were, I don't know, working in a bank or something, and somebody's just like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's weird. But no, like that's exactly the world I'm talking about. Though, is that like everybody's doing something else. There is no. This is the real. There is no. This is not it, and this is it. You know what I mean? Like they're the and it maybe even took me a while to really wrap my head around that. And I don't know if I can explain even what I mean if that doesn't make sense. But like, I remember Scott McCloud saying this, years ago. You want to break into comics? Okay, you draw your comic on some paper, get a stapler, and fold it in half and staple it. There, you broke into comics. And I think that's become like more literally true as things go on. Like there isn't.
Wish it was that easy.
Well, it depends what you mean by it, right? Like, I mean, the idea of the like successful comic book writers are doing other jobs too. Like there's no, you just have to kind of, I don't know. There isn't a difference. It's just, is it good or is it not? Do you like reading it or do you not? Making a lot of money at it would be very nice. Like, let's all do that.
Yeah.
But that part, I guess, I need to solve. But the other part, I can get my head around.
Yeah, no, I see this before. The artist is complaining about how much they're making. The colorist is complaining how much they're making. The letterer is complaining about how much they're making. The creators go, well, at least you're making something, at least you're getting paid.
You guys are good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Cigna so far, I've not, I'm just happy to be writing Cigna. Like that's what I'm getting out of it right now. Like hopefully there's a bucket full of money at the end, but if there isn't, I got Cigna out. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it's Andrew needs, like, I can write Cigna and still live not making any money off of it, right? Andrew can't draw Cigna in the time frame that we're trying to do it and
not make
live off of it. So Andrew needs to get paid, and Rhonda needs to get paid, and I think we're having an argument with Mowry about it, whether or not he should be paid, but he should be paid. Chris Mowry's lettering it. I forgot to mention that.
And if people wanted to follow you on social media, what would be the best way?
Well, I mean, yeah. So I'm on whatever Twitter is, the John Barber. Yeah, I can't bring myself to say that.
I know. Formerly known as, it sort of sounds like that's symbol formerly known as Prince. It's
right. Yeah. And then I'm on Blue Sky at the same at the John Barber, and that's pretty much my social media. I'm on Facebook, but that's about it. Yeah. I'm real erratic on social media.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest.
Yes.
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you for one, making Power Squared, and two, for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome.
So if you're watching us on YouTube later and you like this, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment if you I don't know what to
Just say if you watched it, leave a comment. Transformers.
If you have a pick for the story I should have written differently, leave your comment.
Yeah. Now that might actually get you something. All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Anytime.
And so until next time, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins.
I'm Trevor Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.